country, I think. And anyway, byproduct of iron is arsenic. And so this mound you see here is really an arsenic dump. It's a historic contamination site. It has been capped, and it has been covered. It's not in use. I mean, if anyone were to propose today, hey, let's rip this thing open and dispose some more arsenic, I mean, that would sound so utterly ridiculous to all of us. We would never have that conversation. Instead, the Park Service, in partnership with us and the Target Consultant Firm and my grant, looked at this site and tried to identify ways to make sure that we don't have erosion, that we don't have groundwater problems that contaminate the river, and what can we do to shore this up? And everything's on the table. Everything from structural improvements to plantings to new types of cover to even moving it. So those are all on the table, and the Park Service is now trying to get some money to implement some things. So I bring that up because of the context. Here we have an ash landfill that is, again, located right on the street, right on the Pines River in the Summers River. And the decisions being made are not factoring in climate change. They're not factoring in storm surge or sea level rise. You'll see in this packet I've referenced a few studies. It's not a mystery. It's pretty much a proven fact right now that we've already experienced sea level rise in New England. The rates here are higher than the global averages, and they will continue to increase. So there's definitely a lot of discussion about exactly what the number is. They're all projections. No one really knows. But we do know that the rate is going up and that it is a problem. In coastal areas, it's not just the sea level rise anymore. It's also what happens when you combine the fact that the tide has risen and then you have a major coastal storm or nor'easter or something like that. If that comes in at the same time that you have, say, the king tides, that excessive high tide once in a while, then all bets are off. We don't know what's going to happen. But what we do know is sites that are along the coast are at risk. There's planning happening everywhere in New England and around the world, really. But even in our little watershed, right across the river in Lynn, Steel Lynn, we just worked with them and finished last year a whole vulnerability and risk study, looking at the entire waterfront to develop proactive strategies for how to protect infrastructure, how to put strategies in place to protect the water quality, looking at the waste treatment plant, everything. Here, for some reason, despite the fact that we've been bringing this up for at least 3 years, bringing it up to public officials at all levels, on the site, it is not factored into the decision making, and it's definitely a concern. So when you look at this ash landfill, one of the things you heard about was the ash and how contaminated it is. I won't get into that. But what we do know is that that fly ash, which has the highest level of contamination, has been deposited throughout this site. So what that tells me is if there is that major coastal storm event, it's not going to matter which part erodes. We can rest assured that there's going to be a high level of contamination in the material events that occur.
Yep.
So this is probably the biggest concern that we have right now. I find it very, very disconcerting to hear talk about the current expansion that's on the table. DEP is, Wheelwright has just proposed an expansion for this facility. We call it an expansion. Anything that brings in 500,000 tons of additional ash beyond what's permittable, I view that as an expansion. That's just me. But anyway, the fact that that is being viewed as almost a business as usual situation that we don't need to worry about unless we go above 50 feet, we don't agree with that. We feel that this site should be closed and capped as soon as the valleys that are already opened up are full. So the gray area, these are the valleys that are opened up now. Okay, that's the active disposal site. The green areas are the grassy capped. So further in my document where you see the two photos, capped, and then here's what it looks like when you rip the cap off. What the current proposal for expansion is calling for is ripping up this capped portion of the landfill. Now note that this portion of the landfill is also what's closest to the resource area. And I have to believe that that's why it was capped first, because it's the most important, being right next to the marsh and right next to the Pines River. So we have a very high level of concern, again, with the decision making around this and whether or not there'll be enough oversight. One thing I will say on a positive note, that DEP has really responded to the message that there's a high level of concern around the community and the public affairs. And they've set up, I think, a really organized public process understand that there will be a comment period and all that. Whether or not the comments make a difference is another story. This proposal did not even warrant a full environmental impact report through the NEPA process. I've been working in environmental protection for over 20 years. I've commented on projects prior to this region. I worked in Boston Harbor, so I commented on all the work related to the harbor cleanup, various developments. I have never in the history of my work seen a project with as many environmental concerns and as many comments, hundreds and hundreds of comments being submitted, and the decision be so out of sync with the level of concerns raised. So I bring this up because my underlying concern here is what's driving decision making. Because we're not getting decisions that are in sync with the policies in place. Whether those policies are the ACEC protections, the environmental justice policies, or the fact that even though the state of Massachusetts is in the forefront of climate adaptation planning, for some reason this site appears to be immune, and planning around this site appears to be immune. So those are the concerns that I have. One thing I would like to mention before I get off is I'm here to answer any questions that you have, but also Representative Rosalie Vincent has put forward many bills, and I know we're here to answer your questions, but I also would like to ask you that, and just to say that we very much will need your long-term support. It's clear that we're not going to get decisions that protect the environment here, not through the usual processes. I don't think so. It hasn't happened in the past, and I don't get the sense that it will. And that means that we have to look to other means. At the local level, there is tremendous support for finishing the cap here, closing it, and making this no longer an ash-to-ash landfill where it's such a high risk. The Sawdust Board of Selectmen has voted on the policy, a resolution in opposition of any expansion. The town meeting members have voted in favor of closing the landfill. So, I mean, the support is there. The Board of Health has requested that the company come in for a site assignment hearing, and yet that was refused. And so we don't have the decision making at the local level, even though no one at the local level right now, in terms of those who are in power, would like to see this expanded. It's all going to happen at the state level. So I'm sorry for laying that all on you, but I'm happy to provide you with information, but we're also hoping to work with you on trying to pass some legislation that will make this, that will really put some permanent protections here. Because it's not just this is an expansion what's on the table right now. We very much feel it is. But it's also phase one. This expansion will allow the facility to stay open 5 more years, bring in at least 500,000 tons of contaminated ash, and then pave the groundwork for future expansions to go above the 50 feet. So if not today, then when? I mean, I understand that in the past, decisions have to be made based on the best information available. And maybe that's why DEP felt that the slurry wall was a good idea. This site didn't have a liner, so something needed to be done. Okay, so it still doesn't. The slurry wall is not as good as a liner, no matter how we look at it. But maybe it was the best we could do then. But the best we can do today is something very different. We know a lot today. We know that this site is at risk. We know it's at risk to storms, to erosion, and we know what's in it. And we also know the links to what's in it and public health. And that's something that we've already heard a lot about today. But take a look at the chart in there. There's just a little chart showing what some of the cancer cases are in the region. And no, of course it's not linked to any one site. There are a lot of industrial inputs. But when you know that communities are being overburdened, why then would we turn a blind eye and not close the facility that's contributing? Thanks very much. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. It's been very helpful, and know that Representative Vincent has schooled us about this site very quite a bit, and we know what a priority it is to her, and she's an extremely good advocate, as you heard today.
And I just want to say thank you, Joan. Joan has been a mentor to me during this whole process. I've learned so much from Joan and her passion. I've actually contagious. So thank you.
Thanks very much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Specific questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Dr. Quincy, you get the last word today, and everyone gets an award for being here for so long.
I'm joining her for support. I'm Mike Penzo, president of SBA.
Very good. So I appreciate you coming in, thank you.
Chairwoman Doty, Chairwoman Committee, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to present comments. We provided written comments on behalf of the LSP Association. You have copies of them as well as a little pamphlet about the LSP Association to try to define who we are. My name is Dorothy McGlincy, or Dr. McGlincy. I'm a licensed site professional and professional geologist with more than 30 years of experience in the environmental field. I have worked in industry, I have worked as an environmental consultant, and I have worked in state government. I feel that those, all of those fields have helped enrich me and work towards cleaning up the environment. I've worked in Massachusetts for the past 30 years and have experience in landfills. A little bit about the licensed site professionals. The LSP Association is a nonprofit association with approximately 800 members. We are environmental scientists, engineers, geologists, and other related professionals dedicated to cleaning up contaminated sites. There are so many similarities with the licensed site professionals program and the 21E program with what I'm seeing today and have heard today in today's testimony with the solid waste program, that I wanted to just give you a brief stepping back in time, because there might be some instruction, something of value for the solid waste program. About 30 years ago, in the late 80s, there were contaminated properties that were stagnant. The realtors, the property owners, the bankers, and DEP, everyone was frustrated. No one could move these properties because the Mass DEP had a command and control program, then it was DEQE. Command and control in that you would submit, as an environmental person, you would submit a report to the DEP, they would review it, they would tell you after they review it, well, I want you to change paragraph X, Y, and Z, or maybe it was, we want you to remediate in a different way. But the command and control would always take a lot longer because you're waiting for them to have the opportunity to review the reports, to review the science behind it, and then come up with a decision. And so you're constantly going back and forth, and these properties were stagnating. As a result, the DEP created stakeholder groups which helped create a privatized program. Back in 1993, was it not? 1993 was when the new MCP program went into effect, the new Massachusetts Contingency Plan, which was the privatized program, which is a program that uses the resources of licensed professionals who have appropriate background, experience, and those of us who are LSPs have to take an 8-hour exam, and we have to continue with continuing education more than 12 hours a year to keep our profession up. And what that did was it allowed, once the stakeholders got together, came up with this program, DEP worked hard and had an incredible program that they rewrote the regulations so it could become a privatized program. So you have a cookbook of regulations that the licensed professionals have to follow and move forward with cleaning up the sites. As a result, instead of cleaning up sites and reducing environmental risk to you, your families, all of us in Massachusetts, instead of cleaning up sites about a couple hundred a year at the most, 200 a year, we have over the past 24 years, I think it is now, over 40,000 sites have been cleaned up. It's thousands of sites have been able to be cleaned up and reduce the risk to your groundwater, to your soil, to my soil, my groundwater, and my neighbor's property. And we were able to get those properties back into economic use, so there are no longer as many distressed properties out there. I guess I drank the Kool-Aid. I do believe in this program. Perhaps it's an opportunity to look at this program as we move forward with the solid waste program. It's heartening that DEP is going to be moving into the electronic age with the solid waste program. DEP already has that in the Massachusetts contingency plan, the 21E program. After there's been a spill and a release, you have to notify the DEP within 2 hours of a significant spill. That gets electronically conveyed into a database that any of us can look up the database for spills almost not instantaneously, but very close to instantaneously. You'll know how many spills have occurred in your town, whether it's Saugus, whether it's Andover where I live, or whether it's New Bedford. You'll know where to look for regulations. You know where to look for reports, because all of the reports are filed electronically. As a result, the Massachusetts DEP has been able to quantify and look at the results over the past 24 years and be able to show the areas of success, the areas that need more work. And it's freed up the state agency to work towards continuous improvements, which we feel we all want in all of our programs. So although I'm veering from our written statement about the fact that licensed site professionals are environmental consultants who work on all sides of these issues, whether it's for a nonprofit, or whether it's for landfill operators, or whether it's for homeowners. We also provide third-party inspections to landfills. So we are active in the program, but perhaps this is an important time when we can urge DEP to try and move into possibly a more privatized program. I don't know what it would look like in solid waste, but it certainly has need for being able to quantify its results, hopefully to get away from some of the command and control so that they can focus on what's important, to look at the landfills, look at the other facilities out there and improve those facilities. Finally, one last thing. Every time you go to wash your hands, every time you go to the bathroom, every time you go to put fertilizer on your lawn, every time you get in the car, we are part of a society that creates waste. We are a part of it. Every time you put something in the trash can, always think about reduce, reuse, recycle. Maybe we can all starting from today and listening to the stories today, maybe we can all start help be a part of the solution. But also I offer up to you the successes in the licensed site professionals program and the Massachusetts contingency plan as a privatized program. Perhaps that can assist the solid waste program.
Thank you for your testimony. You know, and obviously you've been here all as well. I think one of the things that has perplexed me, and you may have heard it earlier, is that I hear a lot from my constituents. Why can't somebody else's eyes? Can't somebody do something to enforce it? So let me just ask you. So, what can LSPs do to give any relief to people in these communities that don't feel that DEP is doing their job? Is there anything that LSPs can do?
Well, the LSPs are required to work within the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And if the solid waste regulations are not similar to the 21E or the Massachusetts contingency plan regulations, they may not be able to move things along further and faster. The hope is that with LSPs are working to reduce risk. So even though we might feel like it's taking forever with some of these sites to be cleaned up, the LSPs don't have X-ray eyes. They don't have calibrations on their eyeballs to know exactly that over on this portion of the property, that's really where the contamination is, because there's a little gravel lens taking it that way. We have to put in a bunch of wells to see that, so to speak. But our mission is to try and reduce risk by at a minimum, giving people bottled water reduces their exposure risk. So that's a frustrating thing for the homeowners. It's not solving the problem fast enough but it is one step towards reducing the risk. Within the MCP program, there are certain timelines that might not be fast enough for the homeowners in the area, but at least there are timelines that say within the first X number of years, you have to investigate it, and then you have to remediate it within, after you know what's going on, then you have to clean it up or reduce the risk and make sure it's not migrating and moving on and making things worse. So as to what they can do, they can be your spokesperson, they can try and translate to you, try and, as other executive directors and other scientists have, find someone you can talk to that can translate those thorny issues, because all around us we have chemicals, and in our own detergents that are going into my septic system, you know, I'm shocked and amazed, but 1,4-dioxane I'm sure is there. Right now there are no wells in the area, and I haven't sampled to see if it's really there. But as we get smarter and as we know about these chemicals and know that they could impact us, we're starting to look for them and we start seeing them. So it's a learning process for all of us, and it is frustrating, but we have chemicals all around us, and we're only, as some people have said, we're only looking for some of them because those are what's being regulated. We have to be careful with all of the products that we use and our disposal of them to make sure we don't make things worse. But as I say, as you wash your hands with those detergents, it's likely there's 1,4-dioxane in that water that's going into your sink and where it goes. So I think learning, translating, trying not to get into the weeds with too much acronyms, too many acronyms, but to try to translate it and try and recognize that this is, we all have difficult issues in front of us, and perhaps maybe with big stakeholder groups. The MCP program was not developed with just DEP and one or two consultants. It had so many diverse people. I was amazed at just in the state, and that would be one way to go. But to help your folks, there are some LSPs that are willing to do pro bono work. We have a list on our website that you know, to translate and to try and help and get you through the morass of all of those regulations, as well while DEP changes regulations and hopefully improves them.
Can I just informally add a few things? So, in addition to being president of LSPA, I'm also on faculty at Bridgewater State University. I teach contaminant hydrogeology and environmental science. So, I'm pretty much up on everything that was said today. The LSP program really was designed. We wear two hats. We wear the hat of the consultant and the hat of kind of DEP ad hoc. When I became a sole practitioner 5 years ago, and in the back of my business card it says 3 things that an LSP has to do and, to be a good LSP. The first one is protect human health and safety in the environment. The second, follow regulations. The third, act as your client's advocate. It's got to be in that order. Any other way doesn't work. And I truly believe that. LSPs, you know, we've got 410, I think now. We're down. We've had a few retired people my age and older. But, you know, we're very interested. We're very up on all the environmental issues. When you're dealing with landfills, once the contamination goes out of the landfill, guess what? Then the LSP takes over. That's an MCP issue. I've worked on several landfills. Just for disclosure, I will tell you that I've done a little bit of work for the environmental law, not the environmental law, you know what I wrote down. The National Environmental Law Center, sorry. Looking at the Saltbridge landfill, and my opinion is very different from some of the other speakers. But the point is, when LSPs do get involved in landfill projects, I'm also working on another site that in Westboro, a landfill, as a third-party oversight LSP. So LSPs are today they're involved in landfills. We've been talking about this for maybe 10 years within the LSP Association that it makes sense that maybe LSP should be licensed also to deal with the solid waste regulations, at least as far as the overlap with the MCP. I think it makes sense. Since we've developed EDEP, which is the electronic submittal, it's good for the environment. We don't have to generate reams of paper. But more importantly, there's almost instantaneous access, and everything's open. You can access any site. When I teach, I tell my students, you're gonna buy a piece of property, go to the Mass DEP website, type in the address, see if it's a site. If not, look at the surrounding area. So there's a tremendous database of information available that anybody can access. And as president of the LSPA, I'll throw out that we'd be glad to help you. You can use us. Please call us if you need advice, if you need counsel. More than willing to help you.
We appreciate that, and maybe before you leave, we'll have to make sure that we have you.
Yeah, I'll give you a card.
Thank you. That's
I-
very good. Yes,
Just a quick question. You're a nonprofit, how do you get your funding?
We get our funding through our education. We do have some sponsors, but most of our funding comes from giving courses
And membership.
and membership. Yeah.
And I know that you were saying that you can get access to all the information on a database, but now I know certain facilities who don't, they may have an accident, but they don't report it immediately. Do you know when a spill or an occurrence happens at a facility, when and who is responsible for reporting it? And how long should they take to report it? And do you have any?
Well, the regulations state that those who are the owner or operator of that facility is required to report if that spill is above a reporting threshold. Like if you spilled 11 gallons of gasoline at your property or my property, that's a reportable release. If you spilled 3 gallons of gasoline at your property, that's not a reportable release, but you'd still be required to clean it up and not let it
Well,
in.
I'm talking about a major
But
facility.
a major
not-
facility,
not
they're still
something
required
like-
to do that, but no one has the telepathy to know that a spill occurred, they cleaned it up, and they didn't tell anybody. But typically, those facilities will have some sort of a track record that DEP, at least in the MCP program, usually has an understanding what's going on. And if they do not report it, usually that's a $10,000 fine. So,
Actually, you get $20,000 in hay.
well, yes, it can be,
It can be.
and but it does hit the so they don't have to.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience and your testimony, and that goes for everyone. Thank you very much. This was very helpful. Thank you.